What's good, people? Welcome to The Sweat alongside the living Boston College lacrosse legend, Jessie Coffield. I'm Emerson Lotzia.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Good to see you.
He does that every day. It's Monday, so we're going to make this very easy on you. We're going to do the heavy lifting. You just sit back and relax. Soak up all the knowledge our analysts are about to drop on you.
Okay, golf, football, and the free agent frenzy. That is the NBA and NHL. But let's start with a teeny tiny 4-game baseball slate. This is when we introduce you to our panel. DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg on the right side of your screen, Pierce Dietrich on the left side.
Guys, it's a DK Sportsbook edition of MLB Pickoff. So the Brewers and Reds both have team run totals set at 4.5. You can get -136 on the over for Milwaukee or -122 on the over for Cincinnati. So which do you think has the better chance to hit the over there, Greg?
I kind of like the over for both teams, but if I had to lean towards one of them, I'm going to go with the Reds. So Adrian Hauser overall for the season is pretty good-looking numbers, but it's because he spent a lot of time in the bullpen. If you look at his numbers as a starter, he's been not nearly as good. So as a starting pitcher, he is allowing a 65.4% hard contact rate, so a lot of hard contact, 5.95 FIP as a starting pitcher. Numbers out of the bullpen look great, but as a starter, not nearly as good. Also, really favorable hitting conditions. Hitters Park in Cincinnati. Reds are at home. Both teams, I think, should hit the over here.
Yeah, Pierce, Milwaukee is 1-5 in their last 6 road games. So where are you going on this one?
Yeah, it's a both situation for me, too. If you can parlay it, then go for it. It's July in Cincinnati. The ball flies out. Tyler Mahle is a good pitcher, but we know that he struggles against lefties with a WOBA almost up to 400 against lefties and ISO almost up to 300 against lefties. And Milwaukee is a team with quite a few good left-handed bats. It's going to be hard for him to get through this lineup. On a day with a lot of righties against an average team, sure, you can roster him, but he's giving up 2.9 home runs per 9 against lefties. It's just not going to work for him. And Greg gave you the stats about Hauser. Maybe it's possible that Hauser gets pulled, giving up only 3 or 4 runs, and then a good Milwaukee bullpen comes in and pitches an amazing game. But that's still hard to believe that would happen in July in Cincinnati. It's both.
Pierce, we're also looking at 4.5 individual team totals for the Pirates and the Cubs tonight. Chicago, -132 to hit the over. Pittsburgh, +100 to do the same here. So which one do you feel better about?
I think both of these can go over. If I had to pick, I'm going to go with the Pirates just because I just don't believe in Alzolay. If you look at his first 2 games, he's got a 0 BABIP in those games. That's pretty remarkable. He's only given up 2 hits, both of which were home runs. He's giving up a lot of fly balls. So I think that this thing, basically it's just a powder keg waiting to explode. He's a good pitcher. He's a good young pitcher, but he's been catching a lot of breaks. Basically everything is going into play is turning into fly balls that are getting caught. If those things fly just a little bit further, he's going to easily push the over. So I'm going to take it to Pirates.
Greg, the totals hit the under in 9 of the Cubs' last 11 games against Pittsburgh here, but then you've also got the under hitting in 4 of the Cubs' last 5 road games against Pittsburgh. So do what you want with that information. How do you feel?
So I'm going to disagree with Pierce a little bit. I think it's fair what he says, except Alzolay, I don't think he's a bad pitcher. I think he's looking at regression, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden he's going to be terrible. Like, he's been really good and has been lucky to be that good. To be good minor league numbers, really high strikeout rate. He struck out over 11 hitters per inning in the lower levels of the minor leagues. Still a little bit not totally sure how good he's going to be, but still we look at the Cubs bullpen also. Craig Kimbrell now in the mix, so the bullpen's gotten a lot better than it was before. And then also on the Cubs side, the offense just a little bit better than the Pirates. The Cubs 105 WRC plus against right-hand pitching compared to 100 for the Pirates. So looking at that, I don't really feel too strongly about either of these teams, but I'll lean a little bit more towards the Cubs over the Pirates.
All right, so Pierce, after hearing what Greg just had to say, has your opinion changed at all?
No, I'm with Greg that it's not really, one or the other. I think they're both close. Trevor Williams has been good. The issue is he's just been good enough. And like Greg said, the Cubs bats, if we're looking at it, they're much more firepower from the bat side of the Cubs. It's just, I feel like there's definitely regression coming. I know his strikeout numbers were amazing in AAA, but this isn't AAA. And plus, it's a bit of a numbers crunch with the Cubs. So he might be a little freaked out with the fact that he might get sent down to the minor leagues here soon. Now, that either may motivate him or it might just turn into a firestorm.
By the way, that's my issue with narratives, is that they're all written kind of after the game. where it's like, maybe he's going to be motivated, he's going to pitch well, or maybe he's going to be nervous, so he won't pitch well. It's like, okay, but we don't know that before the game. It's not very predictive. But after the game, we'll have more of a definitive answer, and that doesn't really help us with anything.
That's true.
Makes sense, Greg.
That is true. All right, well, 4.5 seems to be the number of the night because looking at the Giants-Padres matchup, that's the strikeout total for both starters. So you can get plus odds on both to stay under that mark. You got plus 125 for Jeff Samardzija, plus 129 for Logan Allen. Who do you think is more likely to stay under in this one, Greg?
So I think Logan Allen's a little bit more likely to go under. The Giants' offense has been terrible this season, except they don't really strike out all that much. They're kind of middle of the road in strikeouts, whereas the Padres actually strike out the second most of any team in baseball. The other thing to consider with Logan Allen also is even though he's pitched pretty well in his first 2 starts, he's averaging under 90 pitches per start. He's just been really economical, which has led him to work deeper into games. But if he has some innings where there's just a lot of pitches fouled off, maybe it takes him a little while to get some hitters out, he might only go 5 innings in this, and that can make it a little harder for him to get the strikeout numbers.
Pierce, neither of these offenses doing very well.
Yeah, I can't believe that Samardzija is going to be the guy that we like. And it's probably going to be Logan that goes underneath this K total just because he's not a strikeout guy. He wasn't a strikeout guy in the minor leagues, and you've seen him go deep into the games, and he's still not really piling up a lot of strikeouts for as deep as he's going into the games. As Greg mentioned, San Francisco, pretty much middle of the road when it comes to striking out. And the way Logan Allen's been pitching, he'd much rather than just get themselves out, which they are likely to do. He's still a good play if you can afford him. He should have a wonderful game against the Giants. But if we're just looking at strikeouts alone, Samardzija gets there. He might give up 5 runs. They seem to give him a long leash, too. So you don't have to worry about, what if he gets blown up? They'll leave him out there and let him get meaningless strikeouts. Samardzija will go over.
I still miss the days of Jeff Samardzija playing wide receiver for Notre Dame, catching
TBT football
touchdowns
career
left and right from, who was it, Brady Quinn, right? All right, anywho, Brandon Lowe has the best odds of anybody to hit home run in the Orioles-Rays game at plus 340. So which player would you say has the best chance to go deep here? Greg.
So I'm going to go with Pedro Severino. He's kind of a guy who, whenever he's facing left-handed pitcher, I always like him quite a bit for DFS. Ryan Yarbrough expect to pitch the bulk of the innings for the Rays today. They always kind of have short leashes with guys and openers and bullpen games and all that stuff. But assuming that it's going to be Yarbrough on the mound for most of the time, Severino this year, 6 of his 9 homers against left-handed pitching, even though most of his at-bats have come against righties. Overall, 158 WRC plus against southpaws. He just hits lefties really well and doesn't hit righties well at all, which kind of makes him a good DFS play because he's always priced in between where he should be priced versus lefties and righties. So against the righties, he's always a little bit too expensive, and against lefty, a little bit too cheap.
All right, Pierce, you got to go with a Ray, right? Because Tom Eshelman, Baltimore, making his MLB career debut here.
Well, the thing that I would worry about going with the Rays or any of the Rays players is, you'll get Eshelman pitching an inning or 2 innings. Then it's just going to be bullpen guy after bullpen guy after bullpen guy going in there. And, that's not always the best matchup. I would rather go with Mancini, a guy who's known for hitting home runs. And a fun fact about Mancini is he hits better on the road. At 397 WOBA, 267 ISO, at 150 WRC plus. I'll take Mancini.
All right, take a 40-minute break, you two. You definitely earned it. We're going to have you back for MLB Hot or Not. Until then, enjoy this interview with Giants manager Bruce Bochy after a course preview with Reed Fowler.
How's it, golf fans? Reed Fowler here in the DK Live Studios for the 3M Open located at TPC Twin Cities in Blaine, Minnesota. The course will play as a par 71, measure close to 7,500 yards, and will be the first time Minnesota gets a regular PGA Tour event since the Minnesota Golf Classic back in 1969. The late Arnold Palmer, with help from Tom Lehman as a player consultant, designed and opened this course back in 2000 and hosted this tournament on the Champions Tour from 2001 up until last year. Routinely considered as one of the top spots on the Champions Tour, we've seen winning scores in the -18 to -21 range over the last 5 years, with players like Kenny Perry winning 3 times and Bernhard Langer winning twice in the tournament's history. This year's version of the 3M will get a couple of elite players making their way to the land of 10,000 lakes, like Brooks Koepka looking to improve his non-major track record, social media star Phil Mickelson, Hideki Matsuyama, Patrick Reed, and Jason Day. There are no past winners here, obviously, but recent winner of the first Rocket Mortgage Classic last week, Nate Lashley, is in the field as of this moment. Fantastic win for a guy who's no more well-deserving of it. Other than a few top names teeing it up here, we'll see another weak field, which should again allow for a fairly wide-open tournament, as the vast majority of this field will have never played a competitive round of golf here. Guys like Tony Finau, Bryson DeChambeau, Luke List, and other notables should be licking their chops for a solid finish or a win to bolster their FedEx Cup standings with only 10 tournaments left in the season. Minnesota natives like Tom Lehman and Tim Herron will also get a chance to tee it up in their native state. Twin Cities should be a fairly straightforward test at golf and could be similar to what we saw last week with a slight difference in look. According to the superintendent, the course has a link-style aesthetic with a ton of bunkers and 27 bodies of water on the course, which should come into play on 10-plus holes. With 3 par 5s and 2 par 4s measuring just under 400 yards, we should see some risk-reward shots, which could lead to low scores. We could get another birdie fest like last week, with the course already showing us it's scoreable, so birdies are better gained, and strokes gained ball striking will be some key stats I'm focusing on this week. Bryson DeChambeau at 10,500 is one of my favorite plays in Minnesota. DeChambeau's been all over the map this season, but has solid finishes in his last few tournaments. Over the last 24 rounds, he ranks just outside the top 20 in strokes gained ball striking, inside the top 10 in strokes gained par 5s, and 5th in birdies are better gained.
We're here with longtime MLB manager and current Giants skipper Bruce Bochy. He has managed San Francisco going back to 2007, won 3 World Series championships, and we'll talk a bit about that. Boch, thanks for hanging out.
Hey, it's good to be here with you. Look forward to it.
All right, well, let's get down to business here. Madison Bumgarner, of course, a guy that we've all enjoyed watching over the years. He's in the midst of a lot of trade rumors. Now, I don't know if that is distracting to you at all, but just in terms of what he has meant to this franchise over the last 11 years, how significant has he been?
Well, I think if you talk about the face of the franchise, Buster's name is a name that will usually come up, but I think Madison's right there with him, with what he's done for this organization as long as he's been here, his tenure. Of course, what he did in 2014, still the best postseason. I firmly believe this performance ever in the history of the game. And so, we have a great relationship. And, this is part of baseball. He understands that he gets it.
Well, some incredible postseason runs. You can obviously understand, like you said, why teams around baseball be interested in acquiring him for their deep playoff runs. But you got to admit, I mean, for someone who's had so much success as he has in that time of year, he's got one of the worst nicknames going. I mean, being called Mad Bum has to be tough to get used to.
Yeah, you know what? It fits him, though, doesn't it? I mean, that's kind of his persona when he's on the mound. He pitches angry, and he's got a, he's got a reputation that he's earned because of how he approaches the game. But I say angry, but it's a little bit angry, but it's more just this maniacal focus that you love from a pitcher, and we've seen how well it works in postseason. I mean, this guy. He never drifts mentally out there. He knows what he wants to do, and just has unbelievable concentration. And but I think Mad Bum fits him well. He's had a few benches clear.
Yeah. Well, it's a disciplined angry. We'll call it that.
Yeah.
He's a guy who's been around for a while, like we talked about. But as far as young players, be it arms or bats, is there a guy in the Giants system? Maybe he's already on your team, or maybe he's an up-and-comer that people should be looking out for?
Well, I think we had one last night, Beatty. We still feel that, he's up here, but he's still our young prospect, so to speak. Throws 95, has a good curveball, plus plus changeup. He's throwing the slider now, and so he's got the potential to, I think, be like a number 2, number 3 type starter. And then the guy tonight, Sean Anderson, who we brought up this year, he's been throwing the ball very well, knock on wood. He does that tonight, but similar, good arm, went to Florida. We got him in the trade, and he's worked his way up here. But I love his makeup, his attitude when he's on the mound, just a bulldog type guy that we think is going to be a mainstay in this rotation. Now, couple of guys I don't want to leave out. They pitched very well last year. Andrew Suarez, he's down in AAA. He's still a guy we think a lot of. And Derek Rodriguez, who's here now. So, those guys, they're still young in their career and guys that we think can, be in our rotation.
As someone who's been in the game for, the majority of your life, I mean, you played in the big leagues for a little while. You've managed at this point for decades in a couple of different stops.
When young guys like that come up, does it still kind of, I don't know, is it still eye-opening for you seeing that glimmer in young players' eyes when they come up, get that first opportunity? Is it as special for you as a manager as it was maybe early in your career still today?
It is. And you know what? That part of the game hasn't changed for me. I'd love to welcome a new player and congratulate him when he gets called up to the major leagues and watch him perform. I appreciate the gifts and talents that these players have, and to get to see it from a new young player, it's exciting. It still is for me, and I pull for these guys because I've been there. We've all been there at some point in our career, so you know what they're going through. But it's always good to see a young player come up and start his career. And we've been fortunate here. We've had some really, really good homegrown talent come up through here. Going back to Lincecum, Sandoval, Posey, Bumgardner, Panic, Crawford, Bell. I don't want to leave anybody out, but we did very, very well in the draft, and that was the reason. I think we had so much success and helped win us 3 championships. So that never stops, because the tough part of the job here is when you have to send somebody out. That's the worst part. But, when you have, get a chance to welcome and congratulate somebody, that's pretty cool.
You have been offered the chance, speaking of travel, to manage the French team in the World Baseball Classic. So it's an opportunity to manage without managing with any long-term commitment. You were born in France. Is that an opportunity you think you'll take?
I would look at it as, if I can help promote baseball in France, in some way be a ambassador of baseball there, maybe even get a trip or two to France out of it, but just to help them push baseball, because these guys I met with, they just have a passion for the game, and sure, they don't have the talent that some of these countries have as far as baseball, but if some way I could help out, then that would affect my decision to whether I'm going to do it or not. I just don't want to commit right now. Point here soon, I'll have to let them know. But I did listen. I did talk to them, and I did appreciate their passion for the game and wanting, to promote baseball in France.
Well, we know Major League Baseball is promoting the sport in London right now, Yankees and Red Sox. So how popular is baseball in France? I know you said the talent isn't what it is in some other places, but what about just the general popularity?
Well, I don't think it's real popular there, to be honest. Of course, they're big in soccer, but, certain areas it's a little bit more popular. He said down toward Bordeaux country, they seem to play it a little bit more. And to be honest, it's not like I've been over there and I've traveled and looked at fields and stuff, so I can't tell you how popular it is, but I do know it's, they're working on it. This man loves baseball. He's doing all he can to build it up and get some more kids involved.
Bruce Bochy, thank you very much.
Hey, happy Monday. I'm Tara Azak, and with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. We heard crickets from the Los Angeles Lakers on Sunday as they were pretty quiet on the wild first day of free agency. They didn't get involved with big-name free agents like Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker, Jimmy Butler, or Kevin Durant. The Lakers did make waves when they traded for Anthony Davis, but now what? It's looking like they are setting up their dream scenario as they try to sign the reigning NBA Finals MVP, Kawhi Leonard. The Lakers' closest competition is literally their closest competition, as the Clippers are also rumored to be in the mix for Leonard's services. But does Kawhi want to play second fiddle to LeBron James, or be the centerpiece of a new franchise for the second year in a row? Or maybe even a better Hollywood ending would be a return to the Raptors. Kawhi did not take any meetings on the first day of free agency, but is reportedly set to ramp up the process over the next couple days. Until then, all we can do is wait.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are just 64 days away from week 1 of the NFL season. We know this because we are counting. So is our producer, Steph. So as we near kickoff, we're going to start previewing and breaking down teams, talking most important players for season long and DFS.
So the first team we're going to zero in on is the Saints, and here to help is Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. Hey, happy Candidate Day, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Woo!
All
Yeah.
right.
Wait, why time
okay.
out? Well, Jeff is always finishing like eating something while we're coming on, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
He sticks to his routine, and I appreciate that.
He's like Brad Pitt. You know, Brad Pitt in every
Right.
movie is always eating something.
You gotta
That
have your
is Jeff
snacks.
Ulrich.
Yeah.
You gotta have your snacks. All right.
I'm exactly like Brad Pitt. Emerson, you couldn't have nailed
Yeah,
that.
you
Yeah.
are. You handsome dog, you.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. DK Live's panel is predicting Michael Thomas will be New Orleans Fantasy MVP this season. So do you agree with that pick, Reed?
Yeah, I'll let Jeff take the easy answer and say yes. I'll take the second easiest and say it's going to be Alvin Kamara. Clearly, right, Mark Ingram is not there. We expect a little bump in production, not too much, because we saw his production teeter off towards the end of the season, muchly due probably to that first 4 games when Ingram was on that suspension where he essentially played and averaged like 30 touches or whatever it was and was clearly the number 1 running back in fantasy football. But if you look at the Saints overall, they've become more of a run team. We saw in the second half of the season, they were run first, and they're playing defense. Not what we're used to with the New Orleans Saints. When we have Kamara, a guy coming off of 100 targets, 18 total touchdowns, I believe 14, I believe, on the ground, and then 4 receiving. This guy clearly has the ability to not necessarily take a huge workload, right, because you don't want to run this guy into the ground, but Latavius Murray, Taysom Hill might vulture some goal line touches, but I'm expecting a big season from Kamara. And if you look at Thomas, right, he's not going to be in that top 2 or 3. Might be like that 3rd receiver, which clearly is the case because he's so consistent. But DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, a lot of times are going to be those number 2 or 1 and 2 receivers because of their production. And Thomas, because he's so consistent with that 85% catch rate from last year, you see him there. But I got Kamara for my MVP.
I mean, Jeff, we know Thomas led the league in receptions, but is what Reed's saying going to play into this? Just the fact that the Saints are going to be more of a running team? Do you think he's right?
I mean, they were a running team last year, and Michael Thomas still got 163 targets, right? And had 130 completions. There's a couple things about Thomas that would make me lean Thomas over Kamara if we're comparing it. I mean, the Saints are kind of a boring team to talk about off the stop because there's really 2 stars, and then it drops off so much after that. And to me, Thomas is the more likely candidate to have that another consistent season for a variety of reasons. One is his completion rate with Drew Brees is absolutely insane. I mean, they had basically an 80% completion rate, which means that 80% of the time Drew Brees is throwing to Michael Thomas, they're completing a catch, which is kind of unheard of for a quarterback wide receiver connection, especially for a number 1 like Michael Thomas, who's always drawing the other team's opposing number 1 quarterback. It's just unheard of. So Michael Thomas obviously proven himself to be a very good connection with Drew Brees, and it makes sense. He's very good over the middle, very good route runner. Drew Brees, one of the most precise passers in league history. So, I mean, this duo is just going to keep working, in my opinion. It's very much like Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. I don't think you're going to see drop-off year to year. The other factor in this is the Saints have not added anyone. I know they added Jared Cook, but it's not like they've revamped their wide receiver core. You're going to see a whole lot of different looks. It is the Michael Thomas show. Yeah, you might see Jared Cook pop up with a couple extra receptions or someone else like an Austin Carr pop up, but it's not going to cut into Michael Thomas's workload. All things considered, Kamara's going to be a huge factor too. I'd lean the wide receiver if we really had to choose between these two because running backs get hurt more often, they get vultured, but Michael Thomas, those targets are going to be there.
Jeff, let's not sleep on Ted Ginn here. The panel predicting he will be the least valuable player, meaning a guy who will be overvalued. So do you think that'll be the case? Because only one of Ted Ginn's 12 seasons really has been beneficial for fantasy managers. I think he had like 10 touchdowns in 2015.
Sounds like the panel's got some ageism going. 34-and-a-half-year-old Ted Ginn still getting it done. I know there's talking people up, like talking Traquan Smith up, and maybe Jared Cook has a breakout year, but what else do the Saints have to rely on? Ted Ginn has been a pretty consistent performer. He doesn't have the greatest hands, but he'll get you those 40-yard passes every second game, and we saw it in the playoffs. Where did the Saints go as their secondary option? They went to Ted Ginn. Traquan Smith caught 2 passes in the playoffs. Ted Ginn, I think, caught 7 or 8. Like, it was just a clear, once Ted Ginn was back last year, he was going to be that deep option. And I just did not see anything from Traquan Smith that led me to believe that he's going to be the consistent deep threat. Now, they might split work. Traquan Smith might get a little bit more snaps, but I don't think Ted Ginn is necessarily going to be like a lost cause. I don't necessarily want to go all in on him for fantasy either because, like I mentioned off the top, outside of Kamara and Thomas, there's nothing really that excites me about the Saints, but I think Ted Ginn can be given a little bit of credit because I still think he's going to be a factor some weeks, and especially for DFS, you're going to see him pop up with a long touchdown or 2.
Yeah, Reed, it's unlikely again will be anything better than a 1-week replacement option off of waivers, right?
Yeah, and it's funny how Jeff doesn't like the old guys in golf, but likes the old guys in a collision sport like football, and Ted Ginn at 34. Not the
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, right, and not the second-year guy who clearly was a rookie getting his feet wet in the NFL, taking that starting role from Emerson's UCF.
That's right, kid.
Exactly. But like when you look at this question, you look at where these guys are getting drafted. They're getting essentially wide receiver. I think Traquan Smith is coming in like wide receiver 50 or so, or 60, and Ted Ginn is not that far behind. So the overvalue of these two, it doesn't really bother me too much. I clearly like Traquan Smith a little bit better as Drew Brees is number 2, his second year. He got 7 games he started, so I do like that. But the guy who's being overvalued on this team, and Jeff mentioned his name, is Jared Cook. When you look at him when he was with arguably the best quarterback of our generation and Aaron Rodgers, he did absolutely nothing. And then last year when you had Jordy Nelson as your number 1 receiver after Amari Cooper left, he essentially soaked up all of those targets, had a huge inflation of production. So you look at Jared Cook coming in as tight end 8 or 9 on this team as a third option. He's being overvalued more so than the guys, the receivers aren't necessarily going to be these season-long receivers. Yes, DFS, you can get them. You probably can get Ted Ginn or Traquan Smith in the like sub 4K salary. But a Jared Cook, especially in that for the season long, coming in at top 10 tight end, that scares me a lot.
All right, well, you mentioned Traquan Smith, former stud wide receiver at UCF. So he's been named the breakout player for the Saints. That's what our panel thinks. So who do you think is going to be the breakout player, Reed? I mean, with a healthy Ted Ginn Jr., can Smith put his focus on being back in the slot? I mean, maybe he will be the breakout player. What do you think?
This guy's good.
Yeah, Jesse, as the number 1 host of this show, you are exactly correct
I'll take
here.
number 2.
As Ted Ginn never stays healthy. Like he doesn't stay healthy when he was younger. He's now 34. He's not going to stay healthy. So you like that for Traquan Smith in terms of production. You look at Brees' number 2 receivers. Clearly with that offense, when they do pass, like Jeff was mentioning, that even though they're a run-first team, you like that as a number 2 receiver. And you just look at his numbers when he started 7 games. I just like him a lot more in terms of those routes run. You have a bunch of different receivers on this team. Trying to pick the right one who necessarily doesn't have the chemistry of Drew Brees outside of Michael Thomas is going to be tough. It's Michael Thomas, it's Alvin Kamara, and it's dealer's choice. Give me the guy that started 7 games with Drew Brees and Traquan Smith.
Jeff, do you like Traquan Smith to be the breakout player, or are you going to go with somebody else?
I'm going to go with someone else. And look, I mentioned off the top, too, like the Saints aren't really what I'd call a great team if you're looking for breakout players, or if you're doing like a season-long draft, you're looking for that like late-round flyer that you might want to take a chance on. The Saints aren't necessarily going to be the team I'm going to, but there's a couple different players that, other than Traquan Smith, Ted Ginn, that I think are worthy to at least talk about. One of them is Austin Carr, prototypical slot receiver, very productive in college. He's bounced around a couple teams, but the Saints have kept him the last couple years. And at some point, I think he's going to get worked in as the starting slot receiver. Could be this year. But there is one other name I would throw out there, and that is Rashard Matthews. He is under the radar, signed with the Saints. No guarantee to even make the roster. But people forget, and this is a player who recorded over 800 yards like 2 seasons ago. I mean, he's still only 30. If Rashard Matthews comes to camp and starts performing, he could easily slot in as a number 2 receiver because there just is not a much of depth there. So I would really take, or at least keep your eyes on the Rashard Matthews situation with New Orleans. If he does start to get worked in there, definitely could be someone that could have some value once the season starts.
Still only 30. That's still pretty old, though, in the NFL.
Yeah,
but okay. I mean, I know Reed agrees with me. We'll keep it inside the NFC South, though, when we preview the fantasy future of some of the Carolina Panthers. That's coming up with you two, so please hang out. But first, let's see what's cooking after the first 24 hours of free agency in the NBA.
Hey there, I'm Brendan Glasheen, and with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash, clear winner of NBA free agency so far, the Nets. They reeled in Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and DeAndre Jordan Sunday. Brooklyn, now a formidable squad in the Eastern Conference, but not yet, because the obvious question mark is Durant's recovery from his torn Achilles. In all likelihood, KD is going to miss all of the 2019-2020 season. How the star rebounds from the injury remains to be seen. Even with that said, the Nets, like pretty much every other team in the East, they are in the mix to win the conference. It is truly wide open, at least for 1 year. Kyrie Irving once again has the opportunity to be the guy. This time it's with the team he grew up rooting for. From a fantasy standpoint, Irving set up for another excellent season at an all-NBA type level. Can the point guard develop positive chemistry on and off the floor with his young teammates? Another legitimate question. Talent wins, though, in the association, and the Nets just brought in 2 superiors of that category. A+ offseason.
Free agency frenzy was in full force yesterday. Tons of moves being made in the association. So we have DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg and RotoWire's Nick Whalen here to play a free agency edition of Chaser Fade.
All right, the Nets will have a whole new look next season, signing Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, DeAndre Jordan. Their title odds now at plus 2,000, up from plus 2,500. Greg, considering it's unclear at this point when Durant will be ready to play, it's unlikely he doesn't see the floor at all this upcoming year. Chase or fade, the Nets have zero chance, a 0% chance at winning the title in 2020.
Well, as a man of math and science, I hesitate to ever say a team has 0% chance, but it's pretty unlikely that the Nets are going to win a championship this year. Really, the only chance they would have is if they make it through the regular season with Kyrie Irving staying healthy. That doesn't seem all that likely. Then they would need Kevin Durant to somehow come back for a playoff run. That doesn't seem all that likely. It's not totally out of the cards. I don't think it's going to happen. And then even if they were to have Durant come back and Kyrie be healthy, I still don't think they would be the favorite. So overall, I think that at least the the 20 to 1 odds are probably way too short. They should be much longer odds. So it's not a good bet.
All right, Nick, what do you think here? Because dealing with a rehabbing Durant, you got to think about that healthy Kyrie. He could only take the Celtics second round exit last season.
Yeah, I feel the same way as Greg does here. I mean, you can't completely cross it out just because you never know what could happen. But, I mean, this is a team that probably has a ceiling next season as maybe the 3rd or 4th best team in the Eastern Conference. I think right now Philly, Milwaukee, Indiana, Boston are all better than the 2020 version, at least, of the Brooklyn Nets. Maybe even Toronto if they get Kawhi Leonard back. And that's before you even start looking at the Western Conference, which, of course, if you're talking title odds, you got to get through the East. You got to beat the best team out West. I mean, it's fun to talk about what this team is going to be, in 2020, 2021, and even beyond there. But I think it's going to be a fun team to watch while Durant rehabs. But next year's not really a true window of contention for the Brooklyn Nets.
Moving to Katie's old team, the Warriors, they inked Klay Thompson, who will be missing a good portion of the season as he rehabs that ACL, and they added point guard D'Angelo Russell. Meanwhile, Steph Curry has the 3rd best odds to win MVP of all players at plus 550. So Nick, chase or fade, Russell coming in will hurt Curry's chances of winning this award and also his fantasy value.
I'm going to fade that. I don't think the Russell addition really changes much in terms of how Curry's going to operate next season. I think you can maybe make a case that, D'Angelo Russell being new to the situation, unfamiliar with the Warriors, something, they haven't really had to deal with in a while. Maybe that throws them off. Maybe they don't win as many games as people think. And that, kind of in a roundabout way affects Steph Curry's MVP candidacy. But I think if anything, there's a case to be made that it helps Steph. I think you look at what this team is going to look like without Klay Thompson for most, if not all of next season, without Kevin Durant now, for good with him in Brooklyn. It's kind of that skeleton crew that we saw for parts of the playoffs last year when it was Steph and a bunch of guys who, for a lot of franchises would be in the G League. And he still managed to put up good numbers. But we saw how much defenses were able to key in on him. And obviously that affected his efficiency. And it's not really something that would be sustainable to play that way over the course of an 82-game season. I think D'Angelo Russell brings some relief for Steph Curry. It's going to take a little bit for them to mesh. He's not, the off-ball guy that Klay Thompson is. Not many players in the league are. But if anything, I think this kind of eases the burden on Steph Curry, even though D'Angelo Russell isn't the traditional, quote-unquote, Warriors type of player. I think he brings something to the table that at least has to keep defenses honest and is going to end up helping Curry in the long run of an 82-game season.
Greg, do you think they're going to be able to help each other, or do you think fitting into this situation is going to be tough here for Russell?
All right, so I think there's kind of 2 different questions here. And first of all, as just an overall efficiency standpoint and workload, this is a good thing for Curry to have a player like D'Angelo Russell join him. However, if we're just looking at the MVP, that's very much based on counting stats and total numbers. And if we look at what Steph Curry did with Durant and Klay Thompson off the floor last year, he had a 45.7% usage rate, and he scored 46.6 points per 36 minutes. We saw in the playoffs when both of them were out, he had a massive game. Wasn't all that efficient, but he scored over 40 points. So I thought there was a legitimate situation without Russell where we could see Steph Curry average like 35 to 38 points per game, and they would have given him the MVP award just based on just monster counting stats. Now, with Russell in the fold, I think it hurts his MVP candidacy just because he's not going to have those same counting stats anymore. He was going to have to take all of the shots for Golden State. But the one reason I say that there might be cause to fade this overall question is because we don't know if Russell's actually going to be with the Warriors long term. There's already been rumors brought up by Mark Stein that the Warriors are looking to deal, and maybe the Timberwolves would be an option. So if they're going to bring in potentially lower usage players, then the usage for Curry could be back up. But with Russell there, I think Russell's going to take a lot of touches and shot attempts away from Curry, hurting his counting stats and hurting his chances for the MVP.
So, Toodaloo Kyrie, the Celtics have a new face of the franchise, Kemba Walker. Today, also signing Enes Kanter, but they also say goodbye to Al Horford, who inked a deal with Philly. So the Celtics' odds to win the title are now plus 2,000, up from plus 2,500. Greg, chase or fade, their odds should actually be much lower than this.
Yeah, so this is a terrible number. The Celtics are not going to be good this year. They weren't all that great last year, and they've gotten considerably worse. Kemba Walker is a downgrade from Kyrie Irving. Al Horford is a huge loss. He was a really big part of the team. The only way that this team would even be relevant in the title picture, and they're not going to be relevant in terms of title hopes, would be if Jason Tatum takes a massive leap next season. And I just don't know if that's all that likely. I think he's a little bit overrated as a prospect. If we look at what happened to him in year 2 versus year 1, his efficiency was down across the board. He took more long twos. His three-point rate was down. He got to the foul line less frequently. So I'm not all that high on Jason Tatum becoming some superstar-level player when he didn't get better from his first to second season.
Nick, are the odds makers maybe a little too impressed here with the addition of Kemba?
I think they are. I mean, I disagree with Greg in the sense that I think Boston's still going to be a very good regular season team. I think even though going from Kyrie Irving to Kemba Walker is a downgrade in terms of talent, I think what Kemba Walker brings to that locker room, and obviously what Kyrie Irving kind of took away from it last year, the difference there will go a long way toward making up the talent difference. But I mean, like Greg said, I don't think we've talked enough about what the loss of Al Horford is going to mean for this team, or maybe the better way to say it is what he meant for them these last 3 years. I think replacing him with a guy like Enes Kanter, he's a name. He's somebody that people recognize. You go look at his basketball reference page. He almost averaged a double-double last year. That all looks great. But the things that Al Horford did for this team were not necessarily tangible. The way he defended guys like Joel Embiid, who's now his teammate, Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think that kind of value is going to be almost impossible to replace. And even if you want to say, swapping out Kyrie for Kemba is somewhat of a wash, swapping out Al Horford for Enes Kanter is certainly not. So a lot of the depth that's made Boston so durable over these last few years is gone now. They're probably going to lose Marcus Morris. And then you start depending on guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, even someone like Aaron Baines, who's been so good for them these last few years off the bench, is gone. You're handing a lot of responsibility over to some inexperienced guys. And I think Boston will still be a playoff team. I think they'll be kind of right there in that second or third tier in the Eastern Conference, but I just don't see them as anywhere near a realistic title contender, let alone an Eastern Conference contender next season.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Greg. We're going to pivot back to football in a couple minutes because we got that preview of the Panthers.
Yeah, but first, here's my interview from last week with Tim Cossins. I'm here with Orioles Major League Field Coordinator and catching instructor Tim Cossins. Tim, this is your 18th season in baseball at the pro level. You've been a player, a coach, and a minor league manager. What would you say has been the toughest role that you've had so far?
I think rookie ball manager was the toughest. When you have kids that are learning how to play the game and they're away from home the first couple of years and all those things, there's so many things that come into play. I think overall those are the toughest years for sure.
Well, you spent 8 years as a player in the minors. Was it tricky to transition from being a player to coaching, or did it feel natural?
For me, it was very natural. I found that the minute that I stopped worrying about myself, and my game, and my skills, and the things that I needed to do with me, for me, at that point, that was the hook, that I could just worry about other people, and that I gravitated towards that pretty naturally.
So earlier this month, you got to be the O's interim manager for a day while Brandon Hyde was at his daughter's high school graduation. Is it your goal to become a big league manager one day?
People have asked me that. I've never truly thought of that. I know it sounds crazy, but I've never really thought in those terms. I've always sort of thought about what's happening right now. I enjoy working with players. I think I've said that a lot in the past. I really enjoyed it. I had fun with it. It's an amazing experience. And as far as managing full-time in the future, if that opportunity ever was presented, I'd have to think about it. But right now, I'm 100% enjoying what I'm doing.
So earlier this season, the Orioles doused you with beer in the locker room after they got their first win of the season, which also happened to be on your birthday. You were seated in a shopping cart along with that game's winning pitcher, John Means. Would you say that moment was fun or maybe a little embarrassing?
I thought it was fun. I'm pretty dry by nature, so I felt like at the point that we're at in this part of this organization, as we were coming together with the club and doing all those things, I felt personally like it was a great experience, and it was perfectly timed. It kind of broke the ice with everybody, and for me personally, to let go and enjoy it was really fun.
It certainly looked like fun. Well, the Orioles are in rebuilding mode right now. How far from being back in the mix for a playoff spot do you think this team is?
That's really difficult. I wish we had the answer to that, and not to avoid the question. I think it's likely 3, 4, 5 years, somewhere in there. We were part of the Cubs rebuild, and that went quicker than I think anybody anticipated. So there's always things that come into play, but to pinpoint an actual time, and things have to line up. But somewhere in that realm, and it's been done over the past few years, and you're seeing more successful rebuilds and stuff. So somewhere in that window, I would think.
Well, here at DraftKings, we give out awards for the best fantasy players in each sport. Nearing the midway point in the season, who would you nominate for this season's DraftKings Fantasy Baseball MVP?
Again, statistical tough question. Probably Bellinger or Yelich, and I had Yelich as a young player with the Marlins, so I'll go with Yelich. I know it's controversial.
Hey, Tara Lenizak here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. NBA free agency has been crazy, but don't look past the NHL. Prize free agent Artemi Panarin is on his way to New York, but not with the team we originally thought. Panarin had been linked to the Islanders earlier in the offseason, but will instead be signing a 7-year, $81.5 million deal with the Rangers. Columbus did try to keep their star winger, reportedly making a last-ditch effort to sign him with a deal upwards of $100 million over 8 years. But in the end, it was clear Panarin wanted out of Columbus. The 27-year-old has split the first 4 years in the league between the Blackhawks and Blue Jackets, registering 116 goals in 322 career games. He'll join New York's second overall pick in the draft, Capo Caco, and re-energize an anemic Rangers offense that ranked 24th in the league in scoring last season. New York also added a talented defenseman in Jacob Trouba to the mix, so it's undoubtedly been an impressive offseason for the Blue Shirts.
So earlier in the show, allow me to remind you, we did a Saints preview. You can rewind the show back when it's finished so you can watch that. We are incredibly excited for football season. So now we're going to take a look at the Panthers with these two. DK Live's Jeff Ulrich on Canada Day and Reed Fowler.
All right, guys, DK Live's panel predicts Christian McCaffrey will be their fantasy MVP this season. Jeff, do you agree with that pick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Just say yes, and let's go to the next question.
I'm going to take it a step further too, Jesse. I mean, I think Christian McCaffrey is pretty much the number one running back right now for me for season long. Anyways, if you're drafting, and there's a variety of reasons why, but I mean, first it boils down to Cam Newton is getting older, and the Panthers have fully committed to using Christian McCaffrey as a 3-down running back. We saw that last year. He took over 57% of the red zone snaps, and Cam Newton only took 13% of the red zone snaps last year. That was his lowest total maybe ever in his career, definitely the last 5 years. So that is the big shift, and that is what led to Christian McCaffrey having a monster year. It wasn't necessarily the touches. Most people knew he was going to get those touches. It was getting the red zone touches and getting the touchdowns. And with Cam Newton getting older, coming off injury, you really think that red zone usage by Christian McCaffrey is going to stay the same. And I like him over Zeke, and I like him over Saquon Barkley because Zeke Elliott, maybe some off-field issues. Saquon Barkley, the Giants are just terrible. You know Christian McCaffrey is going to get used. You know the Panthers are at least going to be an average team most likely. I like Christian McCaffrey as the number one running back this year.
I mean, Reed, I'm pretty convinced.
Yeah, look at Jeff doing a little extra credit on Canada Day. That's pretty good. He takes it a step further, and he explains why Christian McCaffrey clearly is going to be the MVP. It's not going to be Greg Olsen. It's not going to be any of the receivers here. It's not going to be Cam. It's going to be Christian McCaffrey. And he kind of touched on this a little bit, right? Like, who do we choose in terms of the top 4 or 5 picks? You got Saquon, Zeke, Kamara's in there, Christian McCaffrey. That's really the discussion that we need to be having. And look, they came in earlier last year and they said that they're really going to bolster his touches. And Ron Rivera and Turner, they did. So we have to believe them because they also came out and said earlier this season, in the preseason OTAs, that they're going to scale it back a little bit. So that does scare me a touch. It doesn't scare me off of claiming this guy as the most valuable player on this team. You like this division because they always toss it around. Christian McCaffrey clearly has been a guy who's shown the ability to go the distance in terms of quarter 1 to quarter 4 in terms of those touches. The only thing that does scare me, though, is that workload was so nice last year that if you choose them with the top 2 picks, outside of Zeke and Saquon and those guys, again, I would lead Saquon, like Jeff was saying, over Zeke a little bit more, even though the Giants are terrible. I think I would lean a little bit more Kamara, because we talked about it earlier in that first segment, that they are run first. Again, it's splitting hairs because all of these guys are top picks, but clearly he's going to be the MVP.
Well, the panel also predicts Cam Newton to be the LVP, meaning a player who will be overvalued. Reed, do you think that'll be the case? I mean, you got that injury. Is he going to be fully healthy? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think when you're looking at Cam Newton, now look, Cam Newton in redraft leagues was going like top 4, top 5 quarterback, and we obviously didn't know that he was unhealthy. He had issues with that shoulder, with just his body deteriorating. Now he's going QB 10 or 11, so I don't think he's a worse value, especially if he's going later. Really, it's DJ Moore, in my opinion. You have this guy as the number 1. Funchess is gone. But if you look at Carolina's use of their number 1 receivers with Cam Newton, so I think it's kind of tethered with Cam Newton, is that DJ Moore is being overvalued a little bit too much, not going extremely high in redrafts. But Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen is still there, Christian McCaffrey. Greg Olsen's not going to retire. I mean, he's claimed he's going to retire for the last 2 or 3 seasons, but he's not going to do that. He's going to play again. So now you look at these guys coming in. I just don't trust DJ Moore, these big body receivers. Yes, I liked him, or he showed promise earlier in the season last year, but then it was Curtis Samuel. It wasn't DJ Moore. So I think it's receivers more so than Cam Newton.
I mean, Jeff, even in an injury-marred season, Newton still finished as a top 15 quarterback.
Yeah, but the thing is, his rushing numbers declined. So he finished as a top 15 quarterback, but the thing is, how much more upside is there left here? Because those rushing numbers are not going to get better at his age. Like, they're just not. I mean, his yards per game were his lowest of his career, lowest or second lowest of his career. So obviously he's declining a little bit there. The red zone usage is down. That's what worries me the most about Cam Newton. And the thing is, you have to take a look at it. I mean, compared to other quarterbacks, I mean, are you going to take Cam Newton as the 8th or 10th quarterback after all? Or are you just going to wait and take a better value, another Russian quarterback, a guy like Mitch Trubisky, who's at the beginning of his career, has very similar rushing numbers to Cam Newton last year, but isn't going to see that decline most likely because he's so young. So I think, to me, I do think Cam Newton is heading into the season as quite an overvalued asset. I think Reed actually makes a good point about DJ Moore.
Oh.
Reaching for a Carolina wide receiver is not what I'd want to do. I'd much rather, wait and take a Carolina receiver like in the late rounds than reach for one. So I think DJ Moore as a least valuable player has some sort of argument behind it. But for me, it's still Cam Newton. I think he's going too high, and he's just not a quarterback I want any piece of this year.
And to Jeff's point, look, DJ Moore is going before his boy Tevin Coleman, Jarvis Landry, Evan Ingram in a lot of these drafts. And I like Jeff was mentioning, that's the only time I'd like to take Tevin Coleman is before DJ Moore.
All right, Reed, I'm going to start with you on this one because I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be. They've also got Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore as the co-breakout players of the season for the Panthers. Who do you think will be the breakout player?
It's going to be DJ. No, it's Curtis Samuel. Between those two, clearly when you look at the efficiency from last year, Curtis Samuel was really the guy that had similar numbers. He had less of the opportunities, but had similar numbers to DJ Moore. It's actually going to be Chris Hogan. When you look at these speedy receivers as a breakout, as a speedy receiver, number 3 wide receiver, I think he has a lot of promise. Ted Ginn was on that team at around 30 to 31, had some of his best seasons. So Chris Hogan in the later rounds could be a breakout.
Worst draft pick of my fantasy life last year. Jeff, real quick, breakout player for the Panthers.
Geez, Reed makes one good point, then he makes a horrible one. Hogan's not breaking out anywhere. It's 31. He could barely make the Patriots team last year. They had all the injuries. Chris Hogan couldn't even catch a pass from Tom Brady. It's going to be Curtis Samuel. I think people are really sleeping on Curtis Samuel. This is a player who almost ran and caught 1,000 yards, like a dual combined in college. I mean, he's basically performed as a running back and a wide receiver out of the backfield for Ohio State. I think he's vastly been underused by North Turner, especially last year. He had some injury issues too, but he was clicking with Cam Newton at the end of the year. I know DJ Moore is a similar type of player, and I'm not that down on DJ Moore, but if we're talking about value and players who are going to break out, I think Curtis Samuel, especially in season long, is the value right now. You can get him at later rounds, much cheaper valuation for a season-long draft.
You two are free to go. One more go-around with our MLB panels coming your way after we check in with Adam Kaufman in the Sports Pope.
Kawhi Leonard may go back to Toronto. He's going to take meetings, though, with L.A. That's home. He could go to the Lakers. He could go to the Clippers. I know you think he'd be a great fit with the Clippers, but he could do it.
Kawhi could go to that Leonard could go to the Lakers.
Sure. Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
If that happens, you don't want to play that team. I can tell you that right now. Warriors again, basically. That'd be even better. I mean, to me, that team would be just nasty. But here's the
Except
guys.
There'd be no depth. There would be no depth on that team at all.
But here's the team. Yeah, but forget it. Forget they could put a bunch of bums on the team for the regular season. If they stay healthy for the postseason, their execution for 40 minutes a night is going to be unbelievable. But here's what they need. They need J.J. Redick. They need catch and shoot players. That's what they need. They don't need stars. They don't need great players. They don't even need two-way players. They need catch and shoot players to fill out that roster. They need two bona fide guys who can catch it and knock it down without anybody thinking about anything else. That's what they have to get. If they get that, they will be very successful.
So are you saying that in addition to a third guy, or are you saying you got LeBron, you got Davis? So split the cash.
Yeah, they don't even need the third guy. Like, if they split it and get two really good catch-and-shoot guys, they're going to be tremendous.
Kawhi Leonard, again, he let the defending champion Raptors know, apparently, reportedly, he's going to let them make the final pitch after he meets with the other clubs, namely Lakers, Clippers. Do you think he's still undecided, or he knows what he wants? Can he be wooed right now?
I think right now, and again, this is just from a distance, but I think right now he thinks he's going back to Toronto, and they'll have to screw it up to lose it. I think I think the action was him saying, "I'll give you the last call." He didn't owe them that, so if he's going to give them that. What he's saying is, "You have the way to keep me." They just have to realize they can't screw it up. They got to do what they have to do to make sure he gets everything they can possibly give him. They give him everything they can put on the table for him, and make sure they don't insult him in any way. And I think he likes the idea of staying there and trying to win again. I think that team probably grew on him.
Blending hoops and football, Saints QB Drew Brees, you probably saw this, and he's a hero in New Orleans. He passed the torch, if you will, to Zion Williamson with a framed jersey. Nice gesture, clearly, and kind of funny when you think about the fact that never happened to Anthony Davis, maybe just because at that point in time Brees wasn't ready to pass the torch. He's older now. But is Zion up for the challenge?
From a marketing standpoint, he is. On the court, he's not. No. And you just heard the other day one player call him Randall with hops. I mean, listen, I think people have to realize they are asking an awful lot. I mean, this is going to be, I hate to see what's going to happen, because I really think the expectations are getting out of control for Zion. He is not going to dominate the league the way people think he is at the start of the season. I think they're really in for a surprise. Not that he's not talented, but the idea that he is going to be LeBron James or Michael Jordan or Larry Bird, where when they started in the league, is not going to happen, I don't think. He does not have that kind of scoring ability in the NBA.
Let's wrap up this 60-minute joyride with the two men who started this 60-minute joyride. Our baseball panel consisting of DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg and Pierce Dietrich.
Guys, it's MLB hot or not. Pretty simple. Do you think the following players will be cooking? Sporting that flame emoji on the DK app. You guys all know what I'm talking about. Or the complete opposite and give you the snowflake, which is never a good thing. Trust me on that. Manny Machado's, though, he's been on fire as of late, hitting .356 in his last 10 games, but he's playing San Francisco tonight. Team he struggled against this season, so hot or not this evening, Greg?
I'm going to go with hot here. So one of the reasons for Manny Machado's struggles against the Giants is because when he plays in San Francisco, it's a really strong pitcher's park. But tonight the game's in San Diego. That's less of a concern. It's kind of more of a neutral park. And the other thing about Samardzija, he's pitched pretty well at home this year, but a little bit of a train wreck on the season, 5.41 FIP. So we consider Machado at home, which is much better than him playing in San Francisco. So I kind of discount any of the struggles he's had against the Giants in the past.
Yeah, Pierce, Machado's got that matchup with Jeff Samardzija, a contact-oriented pitcher here.
Yeah, Samardzija surprisingly has been pretty good against righties, and he's been decent against them over his career. If you're looking for anything really with Samardzija, 40% hard contact, 43% fly ball rate. So, I mean, that's not the worst thing ever, but really it's just about Machado. Machado is just killing the ball in the month of June. Insane WOBA, ISO over about 380 in this month, a 170 WRC plus. I don't really care if they're playing on the moon or if they're playing on Jupiter with a lot of gravity. It doesn't matter the ballpark. You play Machado right now.
Well, Jason Hayward's homered in 3 straight games. Can he keep the fantasy points coming tonight against the Pirates, Pierce?
I don't think so. I like Trevor Williams. He's pitched well against left-handed bats. He's 34% hard contact, 34% fly ball rate. X-WOBA is 317. That's the same as his WOBA, so you basically know exactly what you're going to get with him. ISO is 130. He's just not giving up a lot of hard contact. And one of the reasons why Jason Hayward hit 3 home runs in a row is because he was playing at Cincinnati. So you probably want to play the Cincinnati game tonight.
Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Pierce here, not hot. The other thing to consider about Jason Hayward is that he really hasn't been a great hitter for most of the time he's been in Chicago. He's had a really good stretch right now, and he's having a better year. But for the most part, he's been a guy with a below 100 WRC plus during his time with the Cubs. So he's kind of somebody who I'm looking at. His price is up. He's played well recently. I don't want to buy on him when he's kind of at a peak price. Like, he's somebody I'd much rather play in a stack when his price is cheap.
Greg, Josh Bell, he's gone ice cold, hitless in 3 straight games. Is he going to break out against the Cubs? NL All-Star for the first time. Will take part in the home run derby, so we know the dude can rake.
Yeah, give him the hot emoji tonight. So he has struggled recently, but he has a few things going in his favor tonight. He's facing a right-handed pitcher. He's a switch hitter. He's been much better from the left side of the plate than the right side of the plate this year. 158 WRC plus as a lefty. And the other thing also is that he's at home. He also has pretty significant home road splits this year. 161 WRC plus when he plays at home. So he's at home. He's hitting from the more favorable side of the plate. There's reason to like Josh Bell.
Okay, Pierce, he was 0 for 10 with a pair of walks over the weekend. That was against the Brewers. He stinks against the Brewers this season, but this is against the Cubs. So can he snap the skid?
Yeah, but he had hard contact in 2 of those games. So it's not like he was up there looking absolutely terrible. He was making contact, making good contact. It just didn't go his way. That's kind of the way it works in baseball. He's facing Lotzia, which we talked about earlier. He could have a really good game, but the one thing that the rookie has done is give up home runs in each of his first 2 games. Those are the only hits he allowed. But he's given up home runs. He's giving up 53% fly ball rate. So it really looks good for Bell. It's not the easiest matchup, but it's not a terrible matchup by any means.
All right, well, Christian Yelich has been relatively cool lately, hitting .211 in his last 10 games, but he could be set up to break out tonight going against righty Tyler Mahle. Is he going off in this one here, Pierce?
Yeah, he's going to go off. 469 WOBA against righties, ISO of 349. We know that Mahle struggles against lefties, 2.9 home runs per 9, and those stats factor in games on the road. I don't know specifically what he does against lefties at home, but I've got to imagine it's much worse. And if you look at Yelich, he only played 1 series in Cincinnati this year. But if you look last year, 2018, 7 home runs in Cincinnati, 2 triples, 5 doubles for an ISO of 536, a batting average of 500. I would imagine that Yelich is just going to rake all weekend.
Greg, I mean, he's been pretty cool lately. Are you so sure he's going to go off too?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, Pierce and I talked about this at the top that we like the over for both sides of this game. It's just so hard to keep Christian Yelich down for too long. Like, I don't believe in like due or anything like that because I always find it confusing. God, is somebody due or are they cold? But there really are no bad stretches for Christian Yelich. He's just always good. And if you look at him, 196 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. Tyler Mahle struggles against left-handed hitters. It's everything just sets up well for Yelich and this game overall to be a really high-scoring game.
All right, guys, last one here. Who is your slate-approved pick for the 4-game slate that is tonight? So your lock of the evening, Greg, if it's a hitter, maybe give us a pitcher as well you would definitely lock in there.
So with a pitcher, I'm going to say Ryan Yarbrough, and it's really just because there's so few pitchers that I feel decent about tonight. Yarbrough gets a really favorable matchup at home against the Orioles. He's cheap. He's going to let us pay up for some of the more expensive bats like Yelich in the Brewers game. And then it's just also, like, where else do you go at pitching? Like, there aren't expensive guys I really feel good about. Like, if you want to go up for Logan Allen, the issue is, like, what's the ceiling for him? There isn't very much ceiling. So with Yarbrough, I kind of feel he's safe. He's safe salary, go up for pitchers. For hitter, I'll say Yelich and overall Brewers stacks and then just go cheap at pitcher.
Cool. What do you got, Pierce?
Greg's exactly right. There's no pitchers to play. You don't want Cincinnati or Milwaukee. You don't want to play Baltimore. You may be forced to play Jeff Samardzija, which I think you are. And if you spend up for Allen, you're limiting your hitters because you want Milwaukee, you want Cincinnati. And if you want to save a little bit, how about Scooter Gennett and revenge game? Because I know Greg's a math and science guy, so let's go Narrative Street.
Narrative Street.
Pierce loves his Narrative Street. Okay, good stuff, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Good show.
Yeah,
Ms.
we'll
Coffield.
see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., same time, same
Let's do it.
place, same hosts. It's going to be great.
Boom.